welcome to our first action lesson. I'm really excited about this because it means that you've worked through all the lessons so far, and they're quite simple in terms of the content that we're covering, but simplicity means progress. We're able to use the lessons that we've learned even up to this point in a really deep way. The way we do that is through action. Behavioral science tells us that knowledge isn't enough to change behavior. We need to put that knowledge into actionable steps. And it's the part that a lot of educational systems and programs miss. We don't put effort into putting the knowledge into action. That's all it is. And so that's all this step is now. At the end of every module, there'll be an action and an opportunity to make sure that you've retained all the knowledge as well. You'll start to notice that there's a lot of repetition. I go back and cover most of the essentials that you've learned so far, but in various different ways. That's done on purpose because that is how we learn. In our culture, we've forgotten that is such an integral part of our learning process. We tend to read something, enjoy it, and then move on to the next one. We tick that box and we'll move on to the next thing. We need to keep repeating it. We need to keep revisiting it because our perspectives, our experiences change, which then means we can draw more information from that same piece of learning. So you'll notice me repeating and going over a lot of the knowledge and a lot of the learning again and again and again. And that's the reason. It feeds into our action steps as well. So let's have a look at our action steps for module 1. Okay, our first step is just to get personal with the stress curve. Taking the last 2 weeks into account, on average, where would you place yourself on the curve? Now, as soon as you start to think about this, you'll notice that there's a lot of back and forth. And they're 3 of my favorite words, back and forth. That's what all of this is essentially about. We're not trying to avoid the states of distress. What we're trying to do is notice when we're in distress so that then we can focus on eustress and shift from distress into eustress. The way we're doing that at the moment in this early stage is just by simply noticing and refining our language in real time, in the moment. So personalize this. Bring yourself and put yourself into this curve. So taking the last 2 weeks into account, on average, where would you place yourself on the curve? If you're taking notes, draw the curve and literally put a little dot and say, this is me over the last 2 weeks. Make it really specific. What are the dates of the last 2 weeks? And then write a little bit about how you've been feeling. If you're not sure where you are, go to the behaviors. Hey, that's what's going to make it as simple as possible. So the behaviors are the ones listed underneath the curve. There's no right or wrong here. All we're doing is personalizing and bringing you into the curve. This is the first step, and you can pause it now, and when you're ready, press play, and we'll move on to the next part. Okay, now that you've personalized or begun to personalize the stress curve, let's get a little bit more specific. You want to be able to use this as a roadmap. And by that, I mean, you want to notice that you're in distress just during any regular moment during the day, understand what that means and be able to respond to it in real time. What tends to happen is that we notice, we let that distress govern our actions, and then we think about it at the end of the day. We might feel a little bit guilty about it. We might just think, I'll try and fix that up tomorrow. We want to be able to get to the point where our skills and ability allow us to change in real time, shift that state of distress into a state of eustress in real time. So again, let's continue this personalization of the stress curve. This is yours, all right? At the moment, this is just the general blueprint, but this is essentially your curve, and we're going to make it yours so you can then use it as that roadmap in real time. The first thing we want to do here is understand what your distress indicators are. They're different for everybody. Okay, I have very distress indicators to what you do. That's dependent on a whole lot of factors. We're going to keep it really simple. I just want you to have a think about what your behavior, how you feel, everything that happens while you're in those states of distress, whether it's, you know, the lighter stages of distress up back towards the hump or down towards breakdown. Again, it depends on your experiences. So we're thinking about one emotional distress indicator, one physical, one work, and one personal. So to give you some examples here, one emotional distress indicator is literally the emotions that you feel. Now, you can get really specific here. Saying angry, I get angry, that's great. That's a great start. You can always whittle that down and boil it down to a more specific emotion. For example, for me, I've lived most of my life extremely resentful. That it sort of starts as judgment and really opinionated thinking, and then that always leads to resentful thinking and resentful emotions. That's all sort of encompassed underneath anger. So instead of those broad brushstrokes of anger, I now look for those those feelings of resentment and those thoughts, that language of resentment. And it could just be as simple as, I don't do it this way, this is the wrong way. That leads to that feeling of resentment. You should be doing it like that. And then I will victimize myself. Oh, I have to put up with this now. And you go down that snowball of language that only allows you to exist in that state of distress. So for me, the emotional distress indicator that I focus on is resentment. And that changes. Every time I do this, I go back and I'll just make sure, no other behaviors are sort of taking the forefront. But again, we want to keep it simple. We don't want too much task switching going on here, right? We want to keep it as simple as possible. So if you've got like a list of 3 emotional indicators, just try and choose the main one, the one that you feel like you deal with a lot of the time, the majority of the time. So that's an emotional indicator. Then you have a physical distress indicator. So this, again, these are all different for everybody. I get headaches. That was one of the main things when I started meditation. I noticed that these headaches started to lessen really, really quickly. I talk about that in a lot of the other content that is out there. It was my main experience that helped me to understand that meditation is something of quality that we should be practicing. So my physical distress indicator is this strange sort of throbbing headache that sort of, it starts here, but then it's just like drills are coming in at the side of my head. And now I know straight away that means that I have been accruing stress and I've actually gone over the hump and now I'm in distress. Sometimes I'll catch that physical indicator before that emotional indicator of resentment. Actually, majority of the time, I will notice that headache first, and then that'll help remind me, or that'll snap me back into awareness around, oh, I did spend a lot of today in resentment. It could be anything, that physical indicator. Tension through the shoulders. It might be that you start craving different foods. A lot of people talk about the neck. Necks get really stiff. My wife gets really intense, debilitating migraines. And again, if you need any more time to think about any of these things, just pause it. But again, don't overthink it. Keep it as simple as possible. Whatever the main ones are, they're the ones we want to focus on. Then we have that work indicator. So again, what does your behavior look like at work when you're in distress? Do you micromanage? Do you take longer lunch breaks? I know before I started meditating, I used to escape to the toilet. So what are those distress indicators at work? Maybe you start to smother yourself with work. Maybe work just becomes your one thing. And then personal. So whatever your personal life looks like, whether you are a parent, whether you are a sibling, whether you live alone, what are the personal indicators that you are in distress, whatever your personal life looks like? For me, as a father of 2, I I know, well, the distress indicator for me is when I just start trying to control my kids in certain ways. By that, I mean, I'll walk into the room, their bedroom, and it'll be messy. And the first thing I'll do is walk out and I'll start pointing the finger. So you need to go clean that room now. So I start to get controlling. So an emotional, a physical, a work, and a personal distress indicator. Again, we're going to move on to the next step now. If you need more time, pause it here, and we can move on. So we've just done our distress indicators. Now we want to do the eustress indicators. And this is challenging because we have not spent a lot of time focusing on this side of the curve. We've not spent a lot of time focusing on eustress. This is why it's so important to start practicing. This is why this really simple activity is such a crucial first step. We can't focus on anything if it's unclear. We can't focus on anything if we don't feel attached to it, if we don't feel like we're a part of it. At the moment, eustress probably seems like this nice idea, but you might feel quite separated from it. So let's take this first actionable step so that then we can use it in our moment to moment during the day, which we're going to outline after this little activity. So this is the same deal. Eustress indicators, instead of now the distress, the reactionary behaviors, what are your responsive behaviors? How do you know when you're in that state of eustress? Even though in the past you might not have been calling it eustress, now you can. So look back with hindsight and think, okay, when have I been in eustress? What did it feel like? What did I do? What was my thinking habits? What was the language I was using? And let's again start with the emotion. So for me, the main emotional eustress indicator for me is it's based on relationships. So I'm so happy to be connecting. When I'm connecting, I'm just filled with joy. It's what I want to do. I literally want to get out and just talk to people, meet people. It makes me, even joyous doesn't quite do it justice, but again, to keep it simple, it's that joy of connection. So for you, it might just be something like, I feel motivated, I feel energized. Don't rush it, but also don't overthink it. Try and find that balance. A physical eustress indicator. My main one is that I'm getting up early. I get up and the day starts. I can sleep anywhere at any time. And sometimes that leads me into distress. And in the past, that has made it very difficult for me to get up early and prepare for the day. So I know for me, when I start sleeping in, even if it's, 10, 15 minutes, I know that if I allow that to keep happening, within a week, it'll be half an hour that I'm sleeping in, 40 minutes. And then all of a sudden, you've lost all of that time to set yourself up for the day, to start in a really controlled, relaxing, calm manner. And then you're rushed. And that ultimately leads to distress. So that is a eustress indicator for me, being able to physically wake up and start the day when I want to. At work, a eustress indicator, again, there's no right or wrong here. It can be anything you want. Anything that helps you understand that you're in a state of eustress. A work eustress indicator, if you work on a team, it can be about how you work with that team. For me as a teacher, I'm so lucky because I get to go in and work with staff. I get to go in and work with students. And when I'm in eustress, it's the best job in the world. I'm connecting to people. I'm really listening to people. I'm not hiding away on my lunch breaks. I'm actually using the lunch breaks to talk and connect to people. So again, what's one indicator for you that you're in eustress at work? And then you've got your personal as well. For me, my eustress indicator is playing with my kids. I know that when I'm just doing that without thinking about the other things I need to do or without watching the time, when I'm just playing, that is when I'm in eustress. And so that becomes my focus. If I don't feel like that, I focus on it. I take the step required to get back to that state. So again, if you live on your own, it might be the amount of TV that you watch. It might be what you're watching on TV. It might be, the amount of alcohol that you have during the week. It might be the amount of caffeine that you have. I know for me, they've been vices throughout my whole life. Again, pause it here if you need. And we're about to turn all of this thinking into an actionable step. Personalized this curve. You've begun to personalize it. We'll continue to do that throughout the course. And you'll continue to do that as you continue to exercise your focus once we start meditating. And it happens effortlessly. You start to realize things that you never were aware of, but there was no effort put in to actually becoming aware of it. I want you to choose one to focus on for the next week. And then after that, write down what is the other indicator that you're going to focus on. So to be clear, for the next week, you're going to focus on your eustress emotional indicator and your distress emotional indicator. Just that one from each, eustress and distress. And you're going to see what you notice over the next week. That's a good one to start with because obviously it permeates your personal and your work life as well. Now you are going to notice distress. You are going to notice those distress indicators. And we're not feeling guilty for that. We're not shying away from it. We're not trying to hide from it. We know that we're going to be put into distress. It's there for a reason. But what we're doing is we're slowly building up our skills to notice it so that then we can respond to it, so that then we can start to shift it because we don't want to stay stagnant in it. So again, we're just talking about language at the moment. That's all we're talking about. So when you notice that distress indicator, say these words either out loud or in your mind. Right now, I choose eustress because. Now that's a general one. It's a good one to start with. I choose eustress because. Why do you want to get into eustress? For me, it's because I want to be the best father and husband I can be. I know that I can't be that in distress. If I'm being continuously reactionary, I can't be the best father and husband that I can be. So why do you want to get into eustress? Why do you want to shift your state? Why do you not want to exist in distress on a day-to-day basis? When you're at the end of your life and you're looking back with that hindsight, do you want to look at a life that was majority of the time spent in distress? Or do you want to look back at all the eustress? So I choose eustress because, again, this gives you a reason. This gives you meaning, a purpose to focus on eustress instead of just generally focusing on the states of distress. Now, if you're taking notes, a really good addition here is when you notice that distress indicator and you remind yourself, okay, I choose eustress because I'm in this state of distress. That's natural. I choose eustress because you've created a purpose. This second question is all about distress won't help me in this situation because. So it's really identifying how it's not related to your purpose. Distress is meant to be almost momentary. It's meant to get us out of a situation that's threatening us. But because we've created a life for ourselves where our life for us isn't in danger a lot of the time, we are so unbelievably fortunate. In our country, in Australia, population, be so extremely fortunate in the fact that distress isn't required on a day-to-day basis. Not to the extremes that we've normalized it. So distress won't help me in this situation because family around and you're in charge of the cooking. You know, you've got three sorts of meats on, you got three sorts of Webers on, all trying to hit different temperatures on all the different meats. You've got the roast veggies on as well. And you've got 20 people around, all family members. Everyone's trying to get in there and help you with in the kitchen. For most of us, that's an experience that's going to shift us into states of distress. You're going to notice that anger coming out. You're going to notice that irritability starting to poke its head because you're feeling threatened. That triggers survival mode. That triggers those reactionary behaviors. And that's an extreme example. And if you, in that example, were able to say, I choose eustress because I want everyone to sit down and enjoy a meal. I choose eustress because I don't want to burn the turkey, or I don't want to dry turkey at the end of this. And distress won't help me in this situation because I'll lose track of time, because I'll forget something, because I'll be so focused on what's irritating me, I'll forget to take the veggies out of the oven when I need to. Distress won't help you in a situation because it increases the chances of something happening that I don't want to happen. I choose eustress because I care about my family. I want to put a good meal on for my family. I want to feel pride at the end of this. So 1 and 2. And already what you're starting to do is put yourself on this curve. You're starting to align different scenarios of your days and get them as, basic as possible in terms of your day-to-day. Don't think of something that just happens, every now and then. The more you can use this stuff, the better. The more consistent you can be with practicing this, the better. So if something small happens during your lunch break that really causes you frustration, let's start thinking about that. Think about how you can use these 2 questions to help. And you might find that these 2 questions are a little bit too much. And we can whittle it all down into one question. And that one question is, right now, I choose to focus on eustress or distress. And sorry, it's not a question, it's a statement. So we can whittle those 2 questions down into one statement. So if I'm in the kitchen, I'm noticing me start to shift into deeper and deeper states of distress because, I'm feeling that tension. I'm feeling my breath quicken. I'm noticing I'm getting snappy at those I love the most just because they're trying to help me. I can try and circuit break that thinking, that perception that's creating that state of distress. I can try and get ahead of all those messages that I'm sending to the brain that I'm in a state of distress or that I'm heading towards a state of distress because there's too many people in the kitchen, by sending another message. And a statement like this helps to kick that message system off. It helps to start sending those eustress messages. Right now, I choose to focus on eustress because I can just as easily say, right now, I choose to focus on distress. And as soon as I do that, as soon as I consciously make that choice to focus on distress, I'm putting everyone else around me at arm's length. I'm basically saying, I don't really want to do what's best for you right now. I don't want to do what's best for me right now. I'm going to be in a state of distress. I'm going to get reactionary. I'm going to get irritable. I'm going to get angry. I'm going to get grumpy. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not going to be as efficient. I'm not going to be as successful because I'm choosing to react instead of respond. Now, we never want to make that decision. Given the choice, we are always going to choose eustress. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean you're not still going to slip back into states of distress. But that is the training. That is where the practice is at. Notice when you're in distress, making this clear-cut decision and then coming back to eustress. And you do that through the quality of messages you're sending. You can choose to stay in distress, which means you are going to choose to keep sending messages of distress to the brain and body. That's easy to do. That's why we've normalized it as a culture. But if you're able to make this decision to focus on eustress and then start sending those messages of eustress, it's a game changer. And it all starts with understanding this language. So now you can see how all the language that we've talked about is embedded in this statement. Right now, when I've noticed those distress indicators pick up, right now I choose to focus on eustress. And if I notice that inkling, that desire, that want to focus on distress, I come back to that first question. Why am I choosing eustress? Because of that thing that I really want the most, because I want to achieve this, because I'm working towards that person, because I'm working towards that goal. Okay, all right. Right now, I choose to focus on eustress. And your body, might continue doing behavior, might continue doing in those reactionary states, but that's okay. It's not going to change straight away. But you need to start getting ahead of those messages. You need to start taking control. And it starts with the language that you're using, the way that you're thinking. The quality of your thoughts are determined by the types of messages they're sending. Are they distress messages? Are they eustress messages? So this is our actionable step. Now that you have your indicators, you're looking for them. Okay, you've got a bit of a weekly plan mapped out there. However, it's going to work best for you if you need to set reminders on your phone just to keep it, if you need to put it up on your fridge. This week, I'm noticing the eustress emotional indicator of and the distress emotional indicator of. And just become aware of it. That's all you're doing. Because you might notice that eustress pops up in your life more than you thought. And you might notice that the distress indicators are there in environments that you hadn't even noticed. And I guarantee other people around you are noticing them. You're the only one that can change them. You're the only one that can start to change the quality of the messages. And then once you've noticed them, once you've practiced becoming more aware of them, in the moment, you can start changing the quality of the messages just by changing the language around it. And you change the language by asking these questions. You change the language by using this statement. Right now, I am choosing to focus on, and make the decision. Are you going to stay in distress, or are you going to start shifting towards eustress? Or at least start focusing on eustress just by making this decision. Even if nothing else happens after this statement, the fact that you've started to choose, that you've started to take the wheel back for yourself, that is the only way to start. So that's it. The next lesson is the knowledge for Module 1, where you will be taken through 10 questions, really simple stuff. If you make an error in any of them, that's totally fine. You'll just be asked to go back to the start and do them again. But at this stage, just take it slow and you should find it fairly straightforward. And then after that, we're going to move into our next module, which is all about breathing, which is the easiest, most effective way to start sending eustress messages outside of language. It's the best physical way to do it. So now that we've got all of this language all wrapped up in our mind, we've hopefully tied it off. We understand it. We understand what meditation is. We understand what focus is. We understand what stress is. We understand how to use all that language in the moment. We're now going to take all of that into our breathing skills. And then we're going to take all of that into our meditation skills. So again, thank you so much for making it this far. Even if you don't continue with this is enough to help you start changing your perspective, to help you start shifting out of states of distress. So thank you as always, guys. It means so much that you're here, and let's keep going. Let's keep having fun. Let's keep learning. Let's keep asking questions. Most of all, let's keep coming back to yourself. Stop outsourcing. Stop looking for others to help put you back into a state of eustress. You can do it yourself. Come back to these languages. Come back to this understanding. You're worth it. You can do it. And we'll see you in the next module.